These episodes are getting intense. The last one with the Mormon exploding people just for funsies, it was whack. But this one, I think, it takes the cake. For now. Another story you can find in Forensic Files, but again, that show is more scientific, so they show everything, bodies and all. Although feel free to watch it, there's nothing gruesome in it. The craziest part of it all is that the beginnings of these horrifying attacks may revolve around one specific person. Mildred was raised by a single mother who told her, "When you grow old, find a man that says what he means and means what he says." And in 1983, she found just that in John Williams.
He said, "I'm John. What are you doing tonight?" We spent 3 hours just talking. "Are you seeing anybody?" And I say, "No, I'm just waiting for the right man to come along." And he said, "Well, you just met him."
They started a beautiful and sincere relationship that only became stronger after their first test. John was in the Army Reserves, and 2 years into the relationship, he was called to serve in Washington.
He sent me an airline ticket, and he said, "I need you. I can't make it without you. Can you please come?" And so I told my mom, I said, "Gotta go, Mom."
They love each other, they were their support system, and they couldn't live without each other, so it was obvious what the next step was. 3 years later, they got married. I cannot stress this enough. If the story would have gotten boring, as if a normal life kind of boring, those two would have probably made it to old age together. 2 years after the wedding, they welcomed their first son. They were officially a family.
John was a good dad, and he really took time. He came home from work, he ate dinner, he played with his son.
Burn these images in your head because what transpired afterwards is just so unfair to everybody involved in the story. A beautiful family starting a new chapter filled with love. Until next year and a new departure. But this time it was a serious one. John had to fight in the Gulf War. He knew what he was getting into, but it was his job and his duty to his nation. John talked to Mildred and told her everything in his heart in the event he wouldn't return to his family anymore. But to everybody's wonderful surprise, John came back 3 months later. He was wounded, but he was okay. Physically okay. John changed completely. He was not the same man anymore.
He would sit in a chair and rock back and forth. And I'd say, "Honey, is this something I can do?" "No. There's nothing you can do."
John was clearly experiencing PTSD symptoms. Some of those indicators on veterans can be flashbacks or constant thoughts of that traumatic event, avoiding people, places, or talking about that trauma, feeling anger, fear, shame, or guilt, and becoming extremely reactive, hypervigilant, and ready to fight anybody for anything because for them, danger could be anywhere. It is critical to visit a psychologist so they can assess and rehabilitate them. But the first wall starts usually with them. To get help, they must accept that something is wrong. It was in the 80s when PTSD was consolidated as a proper diagnosis, and later in the 90s, movement desensitization and reprocessing plus new medication were implemented. John could have had a chance if only the army had done their job. He would have asked for help, or the family would have been advised what to do or what to expect if something like this happened.
He had no psychological prepping when he returned, nor was he debriefed. And so I felt that what I needed to do is just try to understand him better and help him the best that I can.
Instead, the family was at mercy of his intrusive thoughts. They converted to Islam, a new beginning, new teachings, but that didn't work. Not a job at religion, some people find peace in them. But when dealing with something so complex as a mental disorder, a professional is needed without a doubt. But again, without accepting it, there's nothing that can be done. He started to patrol the neighborhood at night, riding his bike with a rifle, and was honorably discharged from the army in 1994. His mental issues were escalating rapidly. The army knew this, but instead of helping him or giving the family tools to help him, they just got rid of him. John became a mechanic but was getting too handsy with the female customers. There were too many complaints about that to Mildred. Mildred couldn't take it any longer. She filed for divorce in 1999. They were together for 8 more years and had 2 more kids. But John's behavior was intolerable and unacceptable.
He would come in the middle of the night and stand over me. I could feel his presence, and I had to open my eye to a slither so I can watch him walk from one side of the bed to the other, and then he would leave.
Mildred got a restraining order after that, angering him even more. John barged into Mildred's home, and then he said something that will be his manifesto.
I am not going to let you raise my children on your own. You have become my enemy, and as my enemy, I will kill you.
Horrifying, right? Well, he could still see his children every other weekend, so a year later, he asked Mildred to have the kids early on a Friday. The children left with their dad, and that was that. On Monday, Mildred was waiting for them to return, but that never happened. A year and a half later, she got to see her kids again. John took them to Jamaica, changed their identities, and met a woman there, a single mother. John became really close to her kid, a teenager named Lee. He went back to America and was looking into getting food stamps. He and the children had a background check, and that's how they got him and rescued the children. After this, Mildred was given full custody and escaped to Maryland to be near her sister, something John really didn't take well, and honestly didn't give Mildred the peace of mind either. This was a military guy who knew how to track and eliminate a human. I mean, it was kind of his job. And there was another thing Mildred wasn't expecting. In 2002, a wave of violence hit Maryland, but the horror was that most likely it was someone with knowledge of weapons. They call him the serial sniper. 13 people were targeted and 10 of them died. The shootings were random. Victims did spot a black car leaving immediately after the shootings with the lights off, so it was a very high probability that 2 people were in this together. The CSIs found the type of weapon the sniper was using. The bullets were made to destroy the target, so the sniper wanted extreme violence. In 3 weeks, this criminal took control over the streets and the people's safety because nobody was safe, not even children.
Montgomery County officials say tomorrow will be a normal school day.
On October 7th, the sniper shot and wounded an 8th grader as he entered his school.
He's alive, but now everybody was a target. The sniper was probably glued to the news to see what they knew about him and what the next move will possibly be, according to the media. The police found some stuff in a wooden area near the school. Among them, it was a tarot card.
The killer left the death card, inscribed with the words, "Dear policeman, I am God."
He was enjoying it. The spotlight, the fact he could take a life if he wanted, I think he really thought he was God. And just like the last time, more evidence was discovered in a wooden area near another shooting.
The sniper left another note. The letter demanded $10 million to be transferred into a credit card account belonging to an Arizona bus driver whose wallet had been stolen prior to the attacks.
Mind you, this evidence was found after 12 attacks. Detectives think it was just for fun. Money wasn't a big deal. He thought he was invincible until he got too cocky.
The snipers also made repeated attempts to make contact with investigators through the sniper tip line. Most were messages beginning with, "Call me God."
The sniper called a priest to forgive his sins, confessing to everything, plus another crime in Alabama. There, they found a fingerprint at that crime scene. It belonged to Lee, the 17-year-old, a clear link to John. They were living together.
The theory was that he was going to make my murder look like a random shooting.
He taught Lee how to shoot because it was the teenager's fingerprints, the ones found in the rifle, and they modified the car to use it as a cover.
There was a 4-inch hole cut in the trunk, and a portion of the back seat was missing. A shooter could easily get inside the trunk and fire through the hole.
That's why witnesses couldn't see anybody but the car making a clean getaway. They thought of everything. It was a job made by professionals. Lee got life in prison and John was executed by the state in 2009 by lethal injection.
People blamed me and my children, and they felt that if I would have stayed with John, then he just would have killed me.
Who said that? That is psychotic right there. So it was better for the world if she died instead of those 10 people? Okay, we can play that game as well. How about if the army would have had a little bit of empathy and did their job as human beings? Nothing would have happened. John would have received the help he needed, and Mildred and those 13 unfortunate victims would have had a beautiful life. Not only that, but John's violent behavior was on paper. He had a restraining order against him. He was discharged from the army because of his psychosis. He kidnapped his kids, and still, Mildred felt guilty about the outcome of John's rampage. Fortunately, she understood she did what she had to do to protect the kids. After the Trauma is an association created by Mildred to help women experiencing domestic violence, giving them tools to free themselves mentally and physically. She became a teacher with so much experience to give, much like John, who became Lee's teacher as well. Only instead of improving his life skills, the kid will be forever behind bars. I guess that was a window on his parental skills right there. What do you think about this story? I'm sure some of you remember this one, and I sincerely hope you and your loved ones were not involved in it. Leave me your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. It really helps. I mentioned right in the intro about the Mormon guy who used people as sick diversion. Everybody was a pawn for this guy, even himself. Thank you for watching.
People blamed me and my children.
People like was shot.